Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. Today we'll be discussing on one of the very interesting topic that is neurogenic bladder. Already I have previously uploaded one video. This is little revision and little revised things in neurogenic bladder. All my video lectures are mainly for educative purpose. This lecture will be very useful to the students who are in fourth year. For your theory exam, full question can be asked. Also in your oral as well as in your everyday practice, you will see once in a while this group of people we call neurogenic bladder. Also this will be useful to third year students also who are appearing for surgery, because you can get this neurogenic bladder in surgical trauma, particularly to spinal cord, and also in case of head injury. Now, before we go into neurogenic bladder, it is very important to understand what is maturation, how is the bladder control, etc. So that part we'll be discussing first. That is physiology of maturation, what is physiology, and then we'll go to the disorders, and we'll talk in detail regarding neurogenic bladder, then treatment and complications. There are some terminology which are very frequently being utilized, and mainly lower urinary tract symptoms, because they are symptom related to bladder. So I'll be just using those terms because this can be asked in your oral, and you will see those symptoms very commonly in a person who has got a bladder function disorders, because basically the bladder has got two main functions. One is collection of urine and second is voiding of urine. So there will be two main functions. It collects the urine and it evacuates out the urine. So one of the function during evacuation is dysuria, that is painful maturation. Frequency of maturation, that is increased number of time during day and during night. While passing urine, he cannot pass out. He wants to pass urine, but he cannot pass out. Then we call that as a retention of urine. While passing urine, he gets desire to pass urine, but he takes a longer time for passing urine. That is called hesitancy. He gets desire to pass urine, but he has to run for maturation. And good number of time he passes the urine in clothes. That is called urgency, or we call urge. So person has got increased urge for maturation is called urgency. When bladder is full, the some amount of urine dribbles out in the form of drops. That is called overflow dribbling. These are all the conditions which will be related to, we call as voiding. While a person, when involuntary, voids out the urine during night or during sleep, that is called enuresis. Involuntary passing of urine during sleep. And when he passes increased number of time during night, he has got good control. He does not pass involuntary. Then it is called nocturia. If there is urgency, frequency, nocturia and incontinence together, that is very common in overactive bladder. OAB is overactive bladder. After passing urine, if there is still some quantity of urine which is retained in bladder, we call incomplete evacuation. So whatever quantity of urine remains in bladder is called residual urine. Increase in quantity of residual urine is more in favor of obstructive symptoms, because person is not able to evacuate out completely, or also in case of what we call as neurogenic bladder, particularly lower motor neuron type of bladder. And if the person is unable to hold urine, means urine dribbles out, or even with a slight stress, urine comes out, inability to hold urine, that we call as incontinence. These are some of the terms which we'll be utilizing during this particular lecture. So first we will have a little explanation regarding maturation and related to maturation. So maturation is a process by which the urinary bladder empties out when it becomes filled. So there are two main functions we have called storage function and evacuation, that is empty. So urinary bladder will store the urine and then it will empty out completely whenever there is an appropriate time and there is appropriate place. The problem related to bladder are often like enuresis, incontinence, retention, etc. And this may be because of recurrent UTI or maybe because of overactive bladder, etc. Early intervention and diagnosis and followed by an early intervention may prevent the renal damage because of retrograde infection and because of vesico-uretral reflux. Now let us go through bladder anatomy and little amount of physiology. Bladder wall is made up of a muscle which we call as trigone. Detrusal muscles. This muscles has got an inner lining we call as a uroepithelium, and outer wall there is peritoneum. This bladder wall has got two openings for ureter, that is called vesico-uretral junction. This is bladder is called vesico and this is ureter, vesico-uretral junction, through which the urine which is formed by kidney comes into bladder, and bladder will have a storage. The bladder has got one opening which opens into urethra is called as bladder neck or vesico-urethral junction, and there is a triangular area in bladder which is called trigone, where at the tip you got this opening of the ureter and at the apex there is a continuity of a bladder to urethra. At that junction there is what is called as an internal sphincter which is supplied by sympathetic system as well as parasympathetic system. In a male you got a prostatic urethra and then you got penile urethra, and at the junction of prostatic and penile there is what is called as an external sphincter or urethral sphincter, which is a part of a pelvic floor which is supplied by somatic nerve. We'll be doing in detail regarding a nerve supply. While in female we don't have a prostatic urethra part, you got a bladder, then you got a small portion of urethra, and then you got an external urethral sphincter, and urethra will open just above the vaginal orifice. So there are two sphincters in urethra. One is internal sphincter and second is external sphincter. Now this internal sphincter is made up of a smooth muscle fiber at the neck of bladder which prevents the emptying up to the pressure of the threshold level, while external sphincter is at the urogenital diaphragm which is by a voluntary muscle, and this will provide a voluntary control and which is supplied by S2, S3, S4, that is from spinal cord, S2, S3, S4, and which is a somatic nerve supply from anterior horn cell of spinal cord. While this internal sphincter is supplied by sympathetic as well as parasympathetic fiber. Sympathetic fiber will give rise to constriction, while parasympathetic fiber will give rise to relaxation. So constriction of this internal sphincter will give rise to accumulation of urine, and relaxation will help in emptying of bladder. Now this now supply of bladder is by three groups. One by sympathetic system, second by parasympathetic system, and third by somatic. So parasympathetic system is from S2, S3, S4. Sympathetic system is from thoracolumbar, we call T12 to L2. And somatic nerve is again from S2, S3, S4. Now these parasympathetic fibers, we have got another diagram. I'll just first try to finish up this higher centers. So higher centers, we have got a cortical center and we have got a pontine center. This cortical center will have action on pontine center, and it has got one action what we call as an inhibitory action. So whenever the environment is not suitable, sorry, whenever the environment is not suitable for evacuation of bladder, or we call micturition, it will inhibit the pontine center and the act of micturition will be inhibited. This cerebral cortex center has got multiple different areas. The main area is in a frontal lobe. Then there are many other centers. We'll be mentioning some of those areas. While in a pontine center, there are two centers in that. One is facilitatory and one is inhibitory. So there is facilitatory center, there is an inhibitory center. So whenever there is an inhibition from the cerebral cortex, that inhibitory center will inhibit the lower spinal cord center and the act of micturition will be inhibited. And whenever there is no inhibition, this facilitatory center will stimulate the lower spinal cord center and you will have an act of micturition. Now this spinal cord center, if it has got no control from the superior, that is either by the pontine center or by the cortical center, there will be incomplete evacuation. While if there is a stimulation by pontine center, there is a complete evacuation. So hence, whenever the person has got stimulation by the pontine center, there is a complete evacuation, there is no residual urine. This is very, very important because when we get a suprasacral damage, the chance of incomplete evacuation becomes more. So always remember, because there will be no effect of pontine center on lower spinal cord center and person will have an incomplete evacuation. While if the person has got stimulation of the pontine center and that stimulates the lower spinal cord center, you will have a complete evacuation. So this is very important. So cortical center is present in a frontal gyrus, we call paracentral lobule, and it inhibits the pontine center. We have got many other area name also. So this is basically a motor area which will be having an action on the pontine center. In the pontine center there is one nucleus called as a Barrington nucleus which has got a facilitatory action, and there is one another nucleus which will have inhibitory action. So cortex has got mainly inhibitory action, while pons has got facilitatory nucleus as well as inhibitory nucleus. And this cortical center can have a voluntary effect or voluntary action on a pontine center like inhibition, and if cortical center does not inhibit, pontine center can facilitate. So that can have voluntary act of micturition. But sacral spinal cord center, where you got parasympathetic ganglia which are present in, or parasympathetic fiber arises from the lateral horn in S2, S3, S4, that is given a name on-off nucleus, and this particular will supply the detrusal muscle and internal sphincter, and that will help in voiding of urine, or we call act of micturition. And whenever this acts without the effect of, or without the control of cortical or a pontine center, we call that as involuntary evacuation. So that will be the difference between cortical center stimulation and independent action of sacral center. So whenever this acts, it is called as a voluntary urination or voluntary micturition. So cortex can inhibit, pons can have inhibition as well as facilitation. And voluntary micturition or voluntary evacuation will be done by cortex and pons. And that will be complete evacuation. While spinal cord will have incomplete evacuation, or we call as there will be some amount of residual urine in bladder. So you've got a suprapontine center, you've got a pontine center where you've got a Barrington's nucleus which will be facilitating center, which will be having an action on the spinal cord both at the level of sympathetic, that is at T12 and L1 level, and parasympathetic is at S2, S3, S4. And this particular center, parasympathetic center, or we call on-off nucleus, will have action on the detrusal muscle and external sphincter, internal sphincter. And depending upon what is being stimulated, accordingly you will have action on detrusal muscle and internal sphincter, while external sphincter will be supplied by somatic nerves. Now this particular sensation from bladder will be taken by a tracts, sensory tracts, and we have got two sensory tracts, spinothalamic tract and posterior column. Now main impulse from a full bladder will be carried by spinothalamic tract to the brain. Also posterior column will take part in carrying the sensation to the cerebral cortex, that is to the sensory area. And then paracentral lobule, thalamus, basal ganglia, hypothalamus, etc. play a role in a suprapontine center, which will have an inhibitory action on pons or facilitator, or that inhibitory action will not be there. And from brainstem, that is pons, we have got one tract which is called reticulospinal tract, which will be descending down and which will be having an effect on spinal cord at the level of T12 and L1, that will be sympathetic control, and at the level of S2, S3, S4 there will be parasympathetic control. And there will be tracts which we call it corticospinal tracts. This corticospinal tract will be going right up to sacral level, that is S2, S3, S4, and it will have an effect on what we call as the anterior horn cell, and that anterior horn cell supplies somatic fibers to external urethral sphincter, and through that it will take part in evacuation of blood. By and large, the corticospinal tract, when it is acting, it will be giving rise to contraction of external urethral sphincter, and you will have a accumulation of urine in bladder. And whenever there is a inhibition, that external sphincter will be relaxed and you will have an act of maturation. Now this particular fibers, that is reticulospinal tract, will be having main action on sympathetic fiber and parasympathetic fibers. Now whenever the sympathetic fiber has got action, it will have on a detrusal muscle relaxation and internal urethral sphincter will contract. In detrusal muscle there are beta 2 receptor, and in a internal urethral sphincter there are alpha 1 receptors, and this particular fiber are arising from T12 to L1 segment, and there is what is called as a lateral horn, and it will give a supply via prevertebral plexus and hypogastric nerve, while parasympathetic fiber will supply detrusal muscle as well as internal urethral sphincter by a pudendal nerve. This is what is called as three groups of nerve supply: somatic nerve, sympathetic, parasympathetic. And somatic nerve will be supplied from S2, S3, S4, but the fiber will be arising from anterior horn cell, and which will be controlled by corticospinal tract, while parasympathetic fiber from S2, S3, S4 will be affected by reticulospinal tract, or will be controlled by, or will be facilitated by reticulospinal tracts, and that is how the action is there. So from the detrusal muscle, the sensation, that is pain sensation and sensation of distension, will be carried by posterior column, while pain sensation will be carried by lateral spinothalamic tract, and it will go to the cerebral cortex. And in cerebral cortex it will be related to all the different areas, particularly the sensory area, and as there are internal connections, so via frontal lobe it will have effect on pons, that is pontine center, and if the environment is convenient, then person will have an act of maturation, that is now pons will stimulate parasympathetic center and it will inhibit sympathetic center. So as sympathetic center is inhibited, the relaxation of detrusal muscle is inhibited and contraction of internal urethral sphincter is inhibited, and because of stimulation of parasympathetic system, there will be contraction of detrusal muscle and relaxation of internal urethral sphincter. So both these actions will be together. This parasympathetic system will have fiber supplied by pudendal nerve, and that will give rise to detrusal muscle contraction, and internal urethral sphincter will be relaxed. Simultaneously, via corticospinal tract, there will be action on S2, S3, S4 anterior horn cell, which will have a somatic nerve supply to external urethral sphincter, and that external urethral sphincter will be relaxed and person will have an act of maturation, and this will be complete evacuation. So suprapontine center will either stimulate or inhibit, means if there is no inhibition, indirectly pontine center can stimulate or inhibit. So corticospinal tract will be acting at the level of S2, S3, S4, and via that it will help in voluntary control. So that voluntary control will have relaxation of lower urethral sphincter, and during accumulation it will have a contraction of external urethral sphincter. So sympathetic fiber via hypogastric nerve will supply bladder, and that will be detrusal muscle and internal urethral sphincter, while parasympathetic fiber will be supplying what we call as nerve supply to detrusal muscle and external urethral sphincter or internal urethral sphincter, and pudendal nerve will be supplying external urethral sphincter, and this is a somatic nerve supply. Now little idea regarding the receptor. Parasympathetic fiber will be acting via muscarinic receptor, while sympathetic fiber will be acting in a detrusal muscle via B3 receptor and act in the internal urethral sphincter via alpha 1 receptor. While somatic, that is external urethral sphincter, you will have action of nicotinic receptor via AC, acetylcholine, and that will give rise to either relaxation or contraction. So sympathetic nerve supply is via hypogastric nerve, and that is to the detrusal muscle, where sympathetic system stimulation gives rise to relaxation of detrusal muscle and contraction of bladder neck, that is internal urethral sphincter, and that helps in storage. So this will be storage of urine, and whenever there is an inhibition, opposite action will be there, relaxation of internal urethral sphincter, and it will allow the parasympathetic system to have action in the form of detrusal muscle contraction. So parasympathetic system will give rise to detrusal muscle contraction and will help in voiding of urine. So as soon as the parasympathetic system is stimulated, sympathetic system is simultaneously inhibited, and you will have a voiding, or we call micturition. And simultaneously along with parasympathetic system, pudendal nerve will have external sphincter relaxation, and it will help in evacuation of bladder, or we call micturition or voiding. So in urethra we have got two sphincter, one internal urethral sphincter and external urethral sphincter. External sphincter is acted upon by the pudendal nerve, and it is coming from anterior horn cell. It is also called as a Onuf nucleus, and this particular is controlled by corticospinal tract. So it will take part also in voluntary control. While internal sphincter is supplied by sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic by hypogastric nerve, while parasympathetic is by pelvic nerve. Parasympathetic and sympathetic has got opposite action. Sympathetic will give rise to contraction of internal sphincter and resulting into storage of urine, while parasympathetic system will give rise to relaxation, and that will help in evacuation of bladder or act of micturition. So in summary, parasympathetic fiber, sensory fiber, along with that will go to the spinal cord and will pass on somatic fibers. They will go to what we call as spinal cord, and via posterior column and lateral spinothalamic tract will give an impulse, or will give the sensation to cerebral cortex. Motor fiber will be supplied, parasympathetic fiber, by pelvic nerve to detrusal muscle and internal sphincter, which will give rise to contraction of detrusal and relaxation of internal sphincter, while sympathetic fiber will be supplied to bladder by hypogastric nerve, and that will stimulate, sorry, here that is not mentioned. So that hypogastric nerve will be supplying the detrusal muscle. Normally it will give rise to relaxation of detrusal muscle and contraction of internal sphincter, helping in storage of urine. And whenever sympathetic system is inhibited, there will be act of micturition. So there will be inhibition of relaxation of detrusal muscle, and internal sphincter which was constricted will be relaxed, and this will help in act of micturition. So parasympathetic, motor, detrusal center, motor part will help in evacuation. Pudendal nerve mainly supplies the external sphincter and it will take part in voluntary control, and what it will do is it will help in relaxation and help in voluntary control, while hypogastric nerve, that is sympathetic, will help in storage of urine. Whatever we have mentioned, we have got efferent and afferent. Efferent means the fiber from parasympathetic system, that is pelvic nerve, will be going to detrusal muscle contraction and internal sphincter relaxation, and that will take part in voiding of urine, while sympathetic system will relax the detrusal muscle and contract the internal sphincter, will take part in storage, while somatic will relax the internal external sphincter. Voluntary innervation initiates or inhibits the maturation through cortical control, means cortex will first inhibit the pons or does not inhibit. So pons can stimulate or inhibit the lower sacral center, and that will take part in voluntary control, while afferent fibers, that is pudendal nerve, will carry the sensation of pain sensation from bladder wall via internal capsule and will give sensation to cerebral cortex, and that will take part in giving sensation to cerebral cortex. So whenever you want to have a bladder filling, or we call storage, sympathetic system is more active than parasympathetic system. So detrusal muscle is relaxed, internal sphincter is contracted, and that will help in filling. While during emptying, parasympathetic system overactive, and there will be inhibition of sympathetic system. Detrusal muscle will contract, internal and external sphincter will be relaxed, and this will give rise to act of maturation or voiding. Same thing explained very simple. Higher center will have action on pontine center. By and large, the higher center will inhibit, and that inhibition will give rise to storage, while maturating center, whenever there is no inhibition, environment is comfortable, then facilitatory center is stimulated, which will promote the maturation by acting on three. It will stimulate the parasympathetic, it will inhibit the sympathetic, and at the somatic level, it will decrease the nerve activity. Because of that, the external sphincter will be relaxed, detrusal muscle will contract, and internal sphincter will get relaxed, and you will have an act of maturation. And if there is no environment, no suitable environment, there will be inhibition by the higher center, and as soon as there is inhibition, parasympathetic activity is reduced, sympathetic activity is increased, and even somatic motor center will be stimulated, which will produce contraction of an external sphincter. Sympathetic activity will relax the detrusal muscle and contract the internal sphincter, giving rise to storage and inhibition of act of maturation. But at the local level, what happens is urinary bladder when fills up, there is a stretching of the wall, which will give rise to the stretch receptor stimulation, which will pass on the impulse to the brain, and then brain will decide, depending upon the situation, whether to facilitate or whether to inhibit, and you will have either inhibition or facilitation. That is the entire act of maturation or physiology. So you will have a storage, that is called filling, or you will have a voiding. So sympathetic system is for storage, while parasympathetic system is for voiding. So whenever you have got a storage filling, sympathetic system is stimulated, parasympathetic is inhibited, and somatic system is also stimulated. So for stimulation of sympathetic system, hypogastric nerve; parasympathetic system inhibition, pelvic nerve; somatic system stimulation, pudendal nerve, and that will take part in filling. while emptying sympathetic system is inhibited, parasympathetic is stimulated, and somatic is also inhibited, and that will take part in voiding. So micturition reflex, bladder is full, there is stretching of the wall, stretch receptor stimulation, local level you will have a sympathetic system activity reduced, parasympathetic activity increased, somatic activity is reduced, and this will give rise to opening of the internal sphincter, and somatic will give rise to opening of the external sphincter. Now, this particular center, spinal cord center, will be controlled by pontine center, and that pontine center is controlled by higher cortical center, and depending upon the environment you will have either inhibition of pontine center, and then pontine center will either facilitate or inhibit depending upon the order given by the cerebral cortical center. So you got a storage phase and you have got evacuation phase. So storage phase, and there is a desire of evacuation, and then during evacuation detrusal muscle contracts, internal sphincter relaxes, and external sphincter also relaxes. You will have a voiding, or we call micturition. And after that detrusal muscle will relax because sympathetic system is now stimulated. Detrusal relaxation, internal sphincter contraction, and somatic stimulation will give rise to contraction of external sphincter, and there will be storage. So voluntary control, micturition reflex fundamentally is a spinal reflex. Now if there is no control from higher center, then spinal reflex will take and it will produce involuntary evacuation of bladder. But if the higher center is working, there will be voluntary control of micturition, meaning the person will have either facilitation or inhibition by cortex control over pontine center, because in pontine center we have got facilitatory nucleus as well as inhibitory center, but cortex also only inhibits the pontine center, but when it doesn't inhibit there will be facilitation, and when it inhibits, the inhibitory center will inhibit the lower spinal center. So higher center keeps it inhibited all the time, and whenever that inhibition goes away, facilitatory center of pons will now stimulate the spinal cord center, and you will have an act of micturition. That's why it is also utilized voluntary control of micturition. So higher center facilitates the sacral micturition center and initiates the micturition reflex, or inhibits the external sphincter and will have a voluntary control over the act of micturition. Lower urinary tract, bladder function, when there is too much of bladder stimulation, you will have a neurogenic detrusal overactivity, and when there is too little, it is called detrusal acontractility, or detrusal atonicity, or detrusal areflexia. And because of the sphincter disturbances, if the sphincters are too tight, it is called detrusal sphincter dyssynergia, and this will classically happen in upper motor neuron lesion, and this will happen classical in case of what we call as lower motor neuron detrusal muscle acontractility, that is we call detrusal areflexia, and neurogenic detrusal overactivity, we also utilize the word detrusal hyperreflexia. And too loose, that internal sphincter is not working, and that means internal sphincter deficiency, and this will happen whenever there is a damage to sympathetic system. So now we come to the different types of micturition disorders. We'll have two types of micturition disorders. One, because of something is happening in the bladder, but the nerve supply remains intact. So those we call as voiding or storage disorders. So whenever there is an obstruction, it will give rise to obstruction to the voiding. Those classical example, BPH. So those will be voiding disorder. And storage disorders means if bladder is not able to store normally, say like if there is a damage to internal sphincter or external sphincter and it gives rise to incontinence, that will be storage disorder. But if there is a blood nerve supply to the bladder is affected, either at the level of cortex or the pons or suprasacral center, or we call it the lower spinal center, or we call sacral center, or peripheral nerves, we call that as neurogenic bladder. We are going to talk more of the neurogenic bladder, and because of that you have got different types of presentation. You will have upper motor neuron type of a disorder which we call as uninhibited bladder, which is because of damage to cortical center or a pontine center. And if there is a damage below the pontine center up to sacrum, above S2, S3, above S2, S3, up to pons, we call suprasacral damage. That is called upper motor neuron. So this will be the two which will belong to upper motor neuron groups. While in a lower motor neuron, motor, sensory, or both are damaged. So there will be three types of bladder involvement: pure motor, pure sensory, and combined together. We call it a lower motor neuron. So you call autonomous, motor paralytic, sensory paralytic. Those three varieties are lower motor neuron. And we have got two upper motor neuron. One which is because of cortical damage, we call uninhibited bladder. And we have got reflex, or we call as automatic bladder. And that will be classical upper motor neuron. And you will have three groups of common symptoms. One, retention. Second, increased frequency, because of very frequently they develop UTI. And one, because of loss of control, we call incontinence. Depending upon what is being more predominant, accordingly we will have a group of symptoms. So we have got two groups of neurogenic bladder group: upper motor neuron variety, lower motor neuron variety. So we'll be dealing with that. So a person can come to you with retention, frequency, incontinence, enuresis. We also use the word nocturnal enuresis. Overactive bladder will have urgency, frequency, and urinary incontinence together. So now we are going to a portion which we are supposed to discuss, that is neurogenic bladder. Now few things you have to always differentiate. One is retention. So urinary retention is accumulation of urine in the bladder with associated inability to empty the bladder. And this will give rise to distension of bladder and retention. So inability to voluntarily void urine is called retention. It can be acute retention, it can be chronic retention. Acute retention are usually very painful, while chronic retention over a period of time becomes painless retention, and it is usually associated with an increased volume of residual urine. While there is an opposite of retention, we call it a urinary incontinence, where person has got involuntary loss of urine, means person is not able to hold urine, and person will objectively demonstrate a social or hygienic problem, because he will be voiding out urine, which is involuntary loss of urine, and hence this particular person will have social and hygienic problems, while overactive bladder will have urgency associated with frequency, nocturia, and urgency will be there with or without urge incontinence. And that's why it may be urgency with or without, we call incontinence. And there are different types of urinary incontinence. One is called transient urinary incontinence or acute or reversible. And chronic variety is usually urge incontinence, stress incontinence, mix, which has got urge with stress, or there is overflow urinary incontinence, and there is one more variety we call as a functional urinary incontinence. We are not going to talk in detail. Also, you can divide into true, which is continuous, and false, which is usually overflow urinary incontinence. So these are the three classical variety of incontinence you come across in your everyday practice. Is stress incontinence, urge incontinence, and urge and stress together we call mix, and we call overflow, which is also described as a false incontinence. So those are the common variety which you will come across. So stress, urge, overflow, and mixed variety, where stress and urge are together, and which is very commonly seen in an overactive bladder. Incontinence you can classify into continuous or intermittent. Again, in intermittent, daytime incontinence and nighttime. Nighttime is usually used the word enuresis, and daytime is called as a voiding disorder. So it will be one variety of a voiding disorder. Now there is one word called as enuresis. We also use the word nocturnal enuresis. I am not going into detail. That there is an involuntary discharge of urine at the night by children old enough to be expected to have a bladder control, and common age is above the age of 5 years in female and 6 years in male. Female to male ratio is 1:2, and there will be two variety we call as primary nocturnal enuresis and secondary nocturnal enuresis. These are the two varieties which are being described. I am not going into detail. Overactive bladder can be idiopathic, can be neurogenic or myogenic, can be complicated or uncomplicated. There will be one word very frequently utilized is detrusal instability or detrusal hyperreflexia. There is very high urge incontinence, or also described as urge urinary incontinence, or occasionally it can be dry, then we call as overactive bladder with no urge incontinence. And whenever you use the word wet, that is overactive bladder with urge incontinence. And invariably there is a detrusal overactivity. That's why we also call detrusal instability or detrusal hyperreflexia. So overactive bladder is very frequently a mixed incontinence, that is urge incontinence plus stress incontinence. And then there are three common symptoms: urgency, frequency, and nocturia. Now the definition of a neurogenic bladder. If person comes to you with a urinary problem in which the bladder does not empty properly due to a neurological condition, either central nervous system or a peripheral nervous system damage, we label that as a neurogenic bladder. Means neurogenic bladder is a bladder dysfunction where the bladder is either flaccid or spastic due to damage to neurological supply to the bladder. We call neurological damage. So it is a dysfunction of urinary bladder due to the disease of central nervous system or a peripheral nervous system, which involves the bladder control or act of maturation or act of voiding. It is few words we have already mentioned before. We call cortical damage, or it is also called as a cortical or uninhibited bladder. And whenever there is a pontine damage, it is called as a subcortical, or also included in upper motor neuron. And as far as the spinal cord center is concerned, Spinal cord center, if it is damaged, it will be lower motor neuron. And if there is a damage in the spinal cord above sacrum up to pontine center, then we call that as a suprasacral. And suprasacral is also given a name spinal upper motor neuron or reflex bladder or spastic bladder or automatic bladder. While damage at the level of S2, S3, S4 is given a name lower motor neuron or flaccid or autonomous or atonic bladder. And depending upon the damage to the which part of the spinal cord, if it is pure sensory involvement, means the posterior column and lateral column involvement, it will be sensory bladder, sensory paralyzed bladder. And if there is an anterior horn cell damage or lateral horn damage of spinal cord, it will be motor variety, and that will be motor paralytic bladder. And when both are damaged, it is a mixed variety. And if there is a damage above this center, then we label that as a upper motor neuron, that is reflex, spastic or automatic, while lower motor neuron is labeled as flaccid, autonomous or atonic. And if there is a damage between sacral to a pontine center, and if there is a damage at the level of T12 and L1, the sympathetic system will be damaged. And whenever there is a damage to the sympathetic system, it will give rise to overactivity of parasympathetic system. It will be indirectly what we call as a automatic bladder. Now this particular words now will be adding in that what we call as whenever there is a damage to pontine center or higher center, we call uninhibited bladder or cortical bladder, uninhibited bladder or a cortical bladder. Even this pontine center damage is included in this group, we call as a higher center damage, because pontine center inhibits as well as facilitates. So whenever that is being damaged, there is no inhibition. So lower center now takes over. We call that as uninhibited bladder. And it will be incomplete evacuation. If there is a damage between pontine center and sacral spinal cord center, it is called upper motor neuron bladder. And if there is a damage of detrusal nucleus, but pudendal nucleus is spared, then it is called mixed type A bladder. And if opposite of that, detrusal nucleus is damaged and pudendal nerve nucleus is also damaged, spare the detrusal nucleus but damage to the pudendal nucleus, that will be mixed type B damage. And if there is a damage to the lower center, then it is called as lower motor neuron. So we have got two types, uninhibited and upper motor neuron bladder. These are the two upper motor neuron variety. While lower motor neuron is complete damage in the spinal cord, lower motor neuron, sensory paralytic and motor paralytic bladder. Uninhibited is also called cortical bladder. Upper motor neuron is called reflex bladder, spastic or automatic. Lower motor neuron is also called flaccid, autonomous or atonic bladder. And depending upon the area, now we are mentioning the etiology. So cortical damage, most common is stroke, Parkinson disease, multiple sclerosis. Also in case of a normal pressure hydrocephalus, quite common. These are some of the common diseases in cortex which can produce cortical bladder, or we call as a urinary incontinence will be quite common, because person will have an automatic bladder, will not have an inhibitory control over the bladder. That's why it is also labeled as a cortical bladder or uninhibitory bladder. There is no inhibition. While whenever there is a damage to the peripheral nerve, that is at the level of lower motor neuron, it can be because of diabetic neuropathy or alcoholic neuropathy or vitamin B12 or HIV or there is a damage during a pelvic surgery, etc., will give rise to lower motor neuron damage. While damage at the level of S2, S3, S4, right up to pons, will be because of a spinal cord damage, and that is very common in spinal cord injury, particularly roadside accidental injury or traumatic injury to the spinal cord. So we have got a cortical uninhibited bladder, spinal upper motor neuron, that is damage above the we call suprasacral spinal cord injury, that is reflex, spastic or automatic, and at the level of lower motor neuron, flaccid, autonomous or atonic. So these are some of the causes in what we call as a higher centers, that is cortex or in the pons, that is stroke, traumatic brain injury, multiple sclerosis, hydrocephalus, cerebral palsy, Alzheimer, Parkinsonism, even in case of a normal pressure hydrocephalus, even sometime even in brain tumors. And that is also described as detrusal hyperreflexia or uninhibited bladder. While if there is a damage above the sacral center, sympathetic system will be involved, and that will give rise to what we call as a detrusal hyperreflexia, and also there will be vesicosphincteral dyssynergia. So there will be increased tone in the bladder wall, that is detrusal muscle, and also simultaneously there is also increased contraction of detrusal muscle. So there is a dyssynergia between vesico and internal sphincter, and that's why it is called as a detrusal vesico sphincter dyssynergia. So that is because of suprasacral damage, and that is very common in spinal cord injury, multiple sclerosis, transverse myelitis, Guillain-Barré, and disc problems. While lower motor neuron damage is very frequently because of peripheral neuropathy, multiple sclerosis, tabes dorsalis. If there is a damage below or at the level of S2, S3, S4, because that will come at the level of this particular segment will come at the level of lumbar 2 vertebra, cord equina syndrome, or there is an involvement of the spinal cord by herpes simplex or herpes zoster, and this is described as detrusal areflexia, quite common, or lower motor neuron bladder. Flaccid, autonomous or atonic bladder. You will come across, as far as clinical features is concerned, we divide into two big groups. We call upper motor neuron, lower motor neuron. And upper motor neuron we divide into two again, one cortical bladder and one we call as upper motor neuron secondary due to suprasacral damage. So whenever there is a lower motor neuron damage, it will be a flaccid bladder, and flaccid bladder will be distended, there will be overflow incontinence, bladder cannot contract, and if there is a damage to sensory pathway, person will not be able to get the pain sensation, it will be a painless retention, and in that condition there will be bladder will be markedly distended and there will be big retention of urine. While in case of a spastic bladder, which is a upper motor neuron bladder, or also called as a reflex bladder or automatic bladder, the bladder capacity is reduced, the tone in the bladder muscle is increased, internal urethral sphincter is contracted, and because of that increased tone, if there is no control of higher center, the bladder will empty out, and that's why it is called reflex bladder or automatic bladder. This will happen very classical in case of a damage above suprasacral center. So that is what we call as upper motor neuron bladder, and this will be more finding in case of a lower motor neuron bladder. While uninhibited bladder will be a person, as soon as the bladder gets full, person will not be able to inhibit and if he is not able to inhibit, the bladder will empty out. This is described as uninhibited bladder, and that will happen in a damage to either pontine center or to the cortical center. This is also described as a safe bladder, or also you can call as a detrusal hyperreflexia. While what we call as spinal cord, that is upper motor neuron, either reflex, spastic or automatic, is also described as detrusal sphincter dyssynergia, and here it is an incomplete evacuation. Hence the chances of getting urinary tract infection etc. are high, and that's why it is also labeled as unsafe bladder. And in case of a lower motor neuron variety, it is called flaccid, autonomous, atonic, or as there is a damage to the sacral center, we call sacral bladder, and there is completely flaccid bladder. That's why it is also called as a detrusal or reflexia. Person cannot voluntarily evacuate the bladder. So that is classical lower motor neuron. So you will have a spastic bladder, flaccid bladder, or we divide into upper motor neuron, lower motor neuron. In an upper motor neuron variety, because of spasticity and because of detrusal sphincter dyssynergia, there will be high pressure in the bladder, can give rise to hydronephrosis, hydroureter, may give rise to acute kidney injury, and also there may be incontinence. And this is called as unsafe bladder. While in a case of a lower motor neuron, there is no voluntary evacuation. So it is a reflexic bladder. It is a flaccid bladder. There is a flaccid sphincters. So there is an overflow incontinence. Here there will be good amount of residual urine. So chances of urinary tract infection are very, very high. This will give rise to again unsafe bladder. So this is also unsafe. This is also unsafe. But in case of a cortical damage, uninhibited bladder means the person has got normal filling, but he cannot inhibit the bladder, and as he cannot inhibit the bladder, it is called as uninhibited bladder. But because the pontine center, if it is not having control over the lower center, the lower center will give rise to involuntary evacuation of bladder as soon as the bladder is full. This is called as uninhibited bladder. There is a complete evacuation, hence it is also described as safe bladder. So person can have different type of presentation, like urinary incontinence, which can be urge or overflow incontinence. Retention is more common in upper motor neuron. Frequency and urgency again is more common in upper motor neuron. Loss of bladder control will be more common in case of a lower motor neuron. Recurrent urinary tract infection will be again more common with a lower motor neuron variety. Loss of sensation of bladder will be again in a case of a sensory paralytic bladder. Along with that, you can have a erectile dysfunction also getting involved. Nocturia will be more common in case of a upper motor neuron. Secondary to all this neurogenic bladder, you can have a development of calculi, recurrent UTI, hydronephrosis, and person can come to you with a AKI or even with CKD. So all this can be presentation in case of neurogenic bladder. So you will have two types of symptoms: storage symptoms, voiding symptoms. Storage symptoms will be frequency, urgency, and urge incontinence. This will be more common with upper motor neuron rather than lower motor neuron. Also voiding complaint like hesitancy, poor stream, terminal dribbling, incomplete emptying, frequency with urgency. These are again more common with upper motor neuron rather than lower motor neuron. So you will have a sensory bladder, motor bladder, autonomous, uninhibited, and reflex bladder. These are the 5 different variety of bladder you will be coming across. These 3 are lower motor neuron, while uninhibited and reflex bladder will be with upper motor neuron damage. We have got this particular a very nice chart you can go through. We'll be going through that Uninhibited bladder is because of the cortical damage. So damage to the cortical center, and it is a suprapontine damage where you will have a detrusal muscle overactivity which will give rise to bladder sensation is present, bladder tone is normal, capacity is normal, there is a full evacuation, hesitancy may be there, and there will be usually no residual urine. While in case of a infrapontine damage, that is damage between the pons and above the S2, S3, S4, we call as a reflex bladder or reflex neurogenic bladder or automatic bladder, because there is a sympathetic system is being affected and descending tracts, particularly corticospinal tract and reticulospinal tracts are interrupted. So interrupting the descending autonomic tracts and ascending sensory pathway are being damaged. So there is effect on involuntary maturation. So person may have or may not sensory pathway depending upon if it is damaged. Person may or may not have sensation going to the center. Bladder tone is increased because of the local reflex arc is not inhibited. There is no relaxation of detrusal muscle. Hence there is a small bladder capacity. There is a full evacuation. Hesitancy is quite frequently present because the external sphincter, you cannot have a voluntary effects, and there will be some amount of residual urine which will be there. Hence chance of urinary tract infection will be always there. While in a case of a lower motor neuron, if there is a damage to S2, S3, S4 spinal cord level, we call as autonomous bladder or detrusal or reflexia. Means detrusal muscle cannot have a reflex, and hence this is a damage to the what we call is a conus medullaris damage, or S2, S3, S4 damage, we call cauda equina damage or peripheral nerve damage, which is combined damage of sensory as well as motor, and that will give rise to what we call as a bladder sensation will be absent. There will be increased capacity, there will be decreased tone, hence there will be increased capacity, and because there is a sensory as well as motor are being damaged, so detrusal can expand, the stretch reflex are reduced, so bladder volume is increased, there is incomplete evacuation, person cannot evacuate voluntarily, so you will utilize different techniques by which you will evacuate. There will be symptoms of hesitancy and there will be a huge amount of residual urine, and because of huge amount of residual urine, complications like hydronephrosis, stone, recurrent UTI and CKD etc. are quite common. In case of a pure sensory damage, if there is a damage to posterior column or there is damage to the sensory nerve root, then it will give rise to what we call as a typical sensory paralytic bladder, where this will be painless retention, there will be increased capacity, there will be what we call as no full evacuation of bladder and no voluntary control, hesitancy symptoms will be present. Now because the motor fibers are working, there will be overflow dribbling, but the bladder capacity will be markedly increased. This will be peculiar in case of a sensory paralytic bladder. While in case of a motor paralytic bladder, the motor roots are being damaged, and because of that, the bladder sensation is preserved, and because bladder sensation is preserved, the person will have a painful retention. So by and large, the capacity is increased, but not to a great extent. Person cannot have a voluntary evacuation, but person can evacuate with certain maneuver. Hesitancy is a common symptom. The bladder capacity or retention or residual urine is not as large as sensory or autonomous bladder. It is little less than that, and there will be no overflow dribbling. This is 5 different varieties of bladder. At your leisure time you can go through, and this is also one where it is given pathogenesis, possible etiology, and what are the common symptoms what you will come across. This is another, at your leisure time you can go through. Now these are some of the things I'll be just highlighting. That is, cortical bladder is also called as a neurogenic detrusal overactivity, or it is also called as a safe bladder, where the person has got no inhibition over pontine center, and even in the damage of the pontine center, now pontine center cannot inhibit the lower center, and that's why it is also given a name cortical bladder or upper motor neuron bladder, where we use a word safe bladder, detrusal, no detrusal sphincter dyssynergia, and this is called uninhibited bladder or cortical bladder, and it is quite common in cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, head injuries, strokes, normal pressure hydrocephalus, Parkinsonism, etc. The another name given is safe bladder or detrusal hyperreflexia. There is a failure to storage. As soon as the bladder is full, person will evacuate out. Person cannot inhibit. That's why it is described as uninhibited bladder. And also you use the word detrusal hyperreflexia or safe bladder, because there is less chance of urinary tract infections, less chance of back pressure and hydronephrosis. Hence the chance of damage to the kidney is reduced. There is no inhibition regarding time and place of voiding. That's why it is also called as uninhibited neurogenic bladder. So uninhibited neurogenic bladder, there is an impaired bladder function. It is almost in 40 to 90% of multiple sclerosis. In Parkinsonism, quite frequently, almost 37 to 72% means very high incidence. The primary symptoms are almost in 70 to 84% of the case because of spinal injury, particularly damage to the pontine center. Among acquired causes, diabetic, alcohol, B12 deficiency can give rise to uninhibited neurogenic bladder. The symptoms, this is also common with brain tumors and spinal cord injury and injury to the brain. Symptoms are increased frequency, urgency of urination or no urination. You can diagnose by ultrasound. Treatment is temporary catheterization or may require, if not controlled, permanent surgery. Complication usually includes they have got inability to pass urine without catheter. Risk of urinary tract infection or urinary retention increases, then they might require surgery. This will not happen in inability to pass urine without catheter, no. This will be uninhibited bladder. While in case of a spinal cord damage, upper motor neuron damage, between below the pontine center and above the sacral center, it is described as a suprasacral, where most common cause is transverse myelitis and spinal cord injury due to traumatic injury. During acute spinal shock stage, bladder remains absolutely hypotonic and there is a large volume of urine. But when he recovers in a post-spinal shock stage, now the tone in the bladder is regained. The bladder becomes of a small cavity, small capacity. Tone is increased and it is an automatic bladder, because reflexly, as soon as the bladder is full, reflexly the bladder will empty out. So it is also described as automatic bladder. So it is called as a reflex bladder, spastic bladder, automatic bladder. And this bladder, because of increased tone and because of detrusal muscle and sphincter dyssynergia, it is also called as a detrusal sphincter dyssynergia. Short form we call DSD. So because of this, the intravesical pressure is increased. There is a very high chance of vesico-ureteral reflux, hydronephrosis, and person can have damage to the kidney. That's why it is also described as unsafe bladder. So that is the difference between uninhibited bladder and what we call as a upper motor neuron bladder or reflex bladder, hyperreflexia. So it is also called as detrusal hyperreflexia, hyperreflexic bladder. So detrusal sphincter dyssynergia, spastic bladder, upper motor neuron bladder, automatic bladder, these are the common words which are being utilized, or hyperreflexic bladder. These are all the different words where the bladder capacity is small, while in case of uninhibited bladder, normal capacity, there is no increased tone in the bladder muscle, hence bladder will fill up completely, while here the tone is increased, and that will happen after recovery, post spinal shock stage. But during acute spinal shock stage, it will be completely flaccid bladder and there will be large volume of urine. So do keep it in mind. This will be almost like a lower motor neuron. And if you want to differentiate between acute spinal shock and lower motor neuron, do look for bulbocavernous and anal reflex. If they are absent, it is more in favor of lower motor neuron. In a spinal cord stage, those reflexes will be preserved. So this is also called as unsafe bladder or detrusal sphincter dyssynergia, where voluntary maturation is lost and person will have involuntary maturation in the form of a incomplete evacuation. There will be some amount of residual urine and it will be reflex evacuation, reflex or automatic. While in case of a lower motor neuron, as both sensory and motor are damaged, local reflex arc is damaged, maybe lesion at the level or below the spinal level, maybe in an anterior horn cell or maybe even a sensory, and that will give rise to what we call as a reflexic bladder, or we'll describe as a lower motor neuron bladder, where the sensation cannot go from bladder to cortex. Hence, this will be reflexic, huge capacity, painless bladder, and once the bladder is full, there will be some amount of overflow incontinence and there is a very high residual urine, hence the chances of infection, stone formation, back pressure, etc. are more, and it is also called as unsafe bladder. So lower motor neuron, sensory motor are mixed together. That's why it is also described as flaccid, autonomous, atonic, sacral bladder or detrusal or reflexic bladder or detrusal or reflexia or reflexic bladder or autonomous bladder. Also in case of cauda equina, spina bifida, etc. also you can, and here the person will have what we call as a overflow incontinence. It may be continuous or it may be intermittent, and there is an incomplete evacuation. There will be high residual urine. It is also described as atonic bladder, automatic bladder, and there will be overflow incontinence. It is also called detrusal areflexia, flaccid or hypotonic bladder or lower motor neuron type of bladder. And you can void urine by Credis maneuver, that is compressing the lower abdominal and straining by compressing the abdominal muscle, that is diaphragm, abdominal muscle and pelvic floor, that is Credis maneuver. If there is a pure sensory damage, like in case of tabes dorsalis diabetic neuropathy, there is no bladder sensation, there will be overflow incontinence and can void urine with straining, and he can fix the timetable, and then at that particular time by Credis maneuver he can empty out. So that will be a pure sensory denervated bladder. So that is quite common in diabetic peripheral neuropathy, tabes dorsalis. So that will be damage to sensory pathway. While motor paralytic is not very common, but whenever you get the damage to the anterior horn cell, like in case of Guillain-Barré, poliomyelitis, you will have bladder sensation will be preserved, but cannot void voluntarily. Hence, person will require a manual compression like Credis maneuver. Very rare in a clinical setting, not quite common, but can take place transient in case of Guillain-Barré. Person will be having a sensation, hence person will feel that bladder is full and he will be able to evacuate out with Credis maneuver. So you can come across this particular in a lumbosacral spinal stenosis, melangomyelocele, following a surgery, etc. The person will have a painful urinary retention, and because person gets pain, he will try to evacuate out. Hence, there is not a huge capacity of bladder, but person can not voluntarily evacuate a bladder. He will have to utilize the Credis maneuver. There is some amount of residual urine, and because of that, the chances of urinary tract infections are more. So this person, you can also get in a spinal cord injury, you can have a flaccid bladder, atonic bladder, but in an acute spinal cord injury, bulbocavernous reflex and anal reflex will be absent if there is a damage to the motor paralytic bladder rather than spinal cord injury in what we call is a suprasacral damage, acute spinal cord injury above S2, S3, S4. So that we call as upper motor neuron. And in upper motor neuron during acute spinal cord injury, you will have a flaccid bladder, but there bulbocavernous and anal reflex will be preserved. I am not going into detail regarding mixed type A and mixed type B. So mixed type A is a neurogenic bladder where detrusal nucleus is damaged, which will render the detrusal muscle flaccid. We call detrusal areflexia. And pudendal nucleus is intact, and that produces spasticity in hypertonic external urethral sphincter. And this is the reason why this is given a name mixed type A. While in opposite of that, here the person will have a detrusal muscle will be almost areflexic, and there will be spasticity of external urethral sphincter, and that is given a name type A. While type B, there is a flaccid external urethral sphincter and there is a spasticity of the bladder, and this is due to disinhibited detrusal nucleus, and that will give rise to vesicular pressure are usually not elevated because bladder capacity is low, because the bladder is having a small capacity, and this will lead to, because external sphincter is flaccid, so it will give rise to incontinence, and hence the bladder will empty out more frequently. So there will be frequency with incontinence. This already we have discussed, lower motor neuron type of damage. Nocturnal enuresis I am not discussing because the higher cortical center is not fully developed. This will be very commonly seen in a children below the age of 5 years. But if it is seen after the 5 years, we call that as a nocturnal enuresis. This I'll skip over. This is the difference between conus and cauda equina. At your leisure time, you can go through. This is conus medullaris and cauda equina lesion. You can go through. Cauda equina is the spinal nerve root, and a conus medullaris is a lower part of spinal cord. And being a lower part, there is a very high chance of getting a damage to S2, S3, S4 segment. While quada equina is always a damage to the peripheral nerve roots. So it is always lower motor neuron. Now, as far as investigation is concerned, history is most important. Then comes a neurological examination which will confirm that there is some neurological finding along with damage to cortex, pons, spinal cord, or conus medullaris or cauda equina. And then you require an investigation to find out what is the etiology. Depending upon that, you can go for radiological investigations. And you can look for the severity of involvement of bladder by doing cystourethrogram and cystometry. We call urological studies. So you require a good history, good physical examination, neurological examination. Always look for post-residual volume, renal ultrasound to find out the involvement of kidney, serum creatinine, and cystography. These are the common investigations which are being done. As far as a laboratory parameter is concerned, renal panel, that is serum creatinine and blood urea. You can go for creatinine clearance. Independent of muscle involvements, cystatin C, urine analysis, culture and antibiotic sensitivity depending upon suspicion. If you are suspecting UTI, go for culture and antibiotic sensitivity. Renal scan is usually not done, but in case of suspicion, renal scan should be done to find out the severity of damage to the kidney. Renal ultrasound is very useful, and it should be repeated at a regular interval to find out the damage to the kidney, particularly in case of what we call as suprasacral variety and lower motor neuron variety, where there is a very high chance of, and usually we use the word unsafe bladder. Abdominal CT again to find out the complications like kidney, urethral damage and bladder calculi. This you can pick up by ultrasound, and if not, you can go for CT. Cystoscopy is very commonly being advised to find out the pathology or complication of bladder. Urodynamics should be done annually or biannually. And voiding cystourethrogram is also necessary to find out the severity in a case of lower motor neuron variety and in case of what we call as a suprasacral variety in those groups. But usually these investigations are not very commonly required in a case of a uninhibited bladder or a what we call cortical or pontine damage. This is a urodynamic study. This is seen in a normal person. This is what we say in a case of a upper motor neuron where there is a bladder sphincter dyssynergia which can be easily demonstrable in case of a urodynamic studies. You can go for autonomic dysreflexia study also. In that also, by doing a urodynamic study, you will be able to pick up those group of people. Always try to find out whether it is a cortical damage, pontine damage, spinal cord injury, whether it is upper motor neuron, lower motor neuron, and in lower motor neuron, pure sensory, pure motor or mix. And try to localize the damage, and if treatable, go for treatment. And then you can decide regarding a treatment so that you can prevent the damage to kidney and complications. As far as management is concerned, treat the basic cause if it is treatable. Bladder training will be absolutely necessary in case of a lower motor neuron as well as in case of a what we call is a spastic bladder or upper motor neuron bladder, or we call automatic bladder. And in some condition, you might require a surgical or permanent catheter, surgical intervention or permanent catheter. As far as intervention is concerned, good number of time in case of a lower motor neuron, you might require intermittent catheter drainage, or it is also called as a self-intermittent catheter drainage. In case of a motor paralytic bladder, you can go for Credis method, and in case of sensory paralytic bladder, Credis method will be very helpful. Avoid alcohol, tea, coffee as a diuretics you can utilize. So if you are using this, see that you don't produce a complication due to alcohol, tea or coffee. You can utilize, they are mild diuretic effects, you can utilize that. There is one another method is spinal cord stimulation, that is called electronic stimulation of bladder, and you can have a spinal cord stimulation which can help the bladder to evacuate. By and large, the Credis method or Valsalva method is very frequently being utilized, particularly in a lower motor neuron variety, and that should be avoided in a person with detrusal sphincter dyssynergia, which is a variety of upper motor neuron. So in a upper motor neuron, don't attempt Credis or Valsalva maneuver. In a person with a bladder outlet obstruction, particularly if the person who has got, say, prostatic problem, bladder cancer or stricture urethra, avoid that. And on an ultrasound, if you demonstrate vesico-urethral reflux, hydronephrosis, avoid doing Credis or Valsalva maneuver. There is always a danger sign. Or if a person is having a syringomyelia which is expanding, or person has got autonomic dysreflexia, in that case also you should avoid Credis or Valsalva maneuver. As far as the medical management is concerned, we call it the intermittent self-catheterization is one of the simple method, or you can go for an indwelling urethral catheter. But there is always a high chance of recurrent UTI in that particular person. Person should learn an art of doing a catheterization, and person should take all precautions to avoid recurrent UTI. Increased fluid intake, proper hydration should be advised, particularly in a lower motor neuron type of a bladder. Some drugs are useful. Anticholinergic drugs will be helpful, particularly because atropine will block the action of acetylcholine on parasympathetic nervous system, and that will help in what we call as spastic bladder, because it will relax, because parasympathetic system will give rise to contraction of detrusal muscle and relaxation of internal sphincter. Now if you want to block that particular action, in case of a hyperreflexic bladder, or in case of a what we call as a spastic bladder, it will be beneficial. Surgery is usually kept reserved. If conservative measure fails, then only you go for surgical intervention. By and large, two things are being tried. If person has got upper motor neuron, you want to relax the bladder, so you give the drugs which will relax the detrusal muscle, like anticholinergic drugs. And the person, you can also go for Botox injections. That will be beneficial in a person who has got sphincter dyssynergia. Indwelling catheters you can utilize depending upon the requirements. If you require a suprapubic or say continuous indwelling catheters, now silver impregnated catheters are more frequently utilized, or hydrophilic catheters are being utilized. Suprapubic catheter is preferred, more common. In case of urethral abnormality, urethral discomfort, recurrent catheter obstructions, difficulty in catheter insertion, urinary leakage, person desires sexual function, if a person has got prostatitis, urethritis, epididymoorchitis, in all those conditions, suprapubic catheter is more preferred as compared to urethral catheterization. Now this particular what we call is a condom catheter for a male with adequate bladder contraction may be utilized to reduce the chances of skin damage, social problems, psychogenic problems, etc. There are now endourethral stents which are being available. So that can be, endourethral stents can be utilized, and this can be considered particularly if the person who requires a continuous bladder drainage, and it is alternative to external sphincterectomy. So if a person that cannot do a intermittent catheterization, can't use the condom catheter, has repeated autonomic dysreflexia, experiences difficulty in catheterization, there is a prostatic ejaculatory reflux has been seen, inadequate bladder drainage is there, can't use alpha blocker, can't use anticholinergic drugs. In that group of people, endourethral stents are being preferred. You can also go for TURS or sphincterectomy, particularly if there is a sphincter dyssynergia, particularly if the sphincter is very tight or there is a spasm. External sphincter is cut and allowed to have a free flow of urine. So that can be done. Electrical stimulation of a spinal cord, that is called sacral nerve stimulation, is utilized in some group of people where it can be benefited. So electrode are implanted in a spinal canal, and that will stimulate the sacral spinal center, and person will have what we call as evacuation of bladder. You can go for bladder augmentation by reducing the size of bladder. You can go for a urinary diversion and can be diverted into, we call continent urinary diversion or alternative urinary diversion, by doing ileovasicostomy or ureteroileostomy. These are the different procedures which are being done. There is one more procedure called as a Mitrofanoff appendicovasicostomy. So this is one procedure. I am not very familiar and I am not an expert in surgical side. As far as the nursing management is concerned, high fluid intake, avoid getting recurrent urinary tract infections, all precautions should be taken, early ambulation, frequent change in position, dietary calcium restriction, care of catheters, and so that you avoid recurrent UTI, infections, calculi, urinary continence can be established, you improve the quality of life and person satisfaction economically, socially as well as physically. So there are a lot of things which are there. You can utilize absorbent products, ureteral occlusive devices, catheterization, pelvic floor exercise, vaginal weights, biofeedbacks, electrical stimulations, bladder training programs, etc. in a case of a particularly in a lower motor neuron variety. And you can utilize non-invasive techniques like electrical stimulation, drugs, minimal invasive treatment like catheterization, botulinum toxins or sphincterectomy. And when all this does not work, you can go for detrusal myomectomy, sacral rhizotomy with sacral nerve stimulation, sacral neuromodulation, and sphincterectomy. These are all the different procedures. Botulism toxins is to be avoided in a person with a neuromuscular disorders who are allergic to botulism toxins. If a person is on aminoglycoside antibiotics and can't use a condom catheter, do avoid botulism toxins. These are all the drugs which can be utilized, we call as alpha blockers can be utilized. Antimuscarinic drugs can be utilized, which will relax the detrusal muscle and increase the bladder capacity. This will be very helpful to you in a upper motor neuron type of a damage. So detrusal muscle relaxation, you can use alpha blocker, antimuscarinic agents, beta 3 agonist, and botulism toxins. These are being useful. While adrenergic agonists, these are adrenergic agonists, that is this mirabegron, that is most commonly being utilized. As far as a stepwise approach, bladder training, antimuscarinic drugs, then you can go for botox toxins and then surgery. So first always in surgery, these are all the different procedures which are being done. You go for a transobturator, tap, tension-free vaginal tap, etc. are being tried. Artificial sphincter, botulism toxin, sacral neuromodulation, myomectomy, cystoplasty, augmented cystoplasty, and then last is urinary diversion. Complications of neurogenic bladder infection, hydronephrosis, stones, loss of function of kidney, that is AKI and CKD, quite common. Reflex voiding complications, particularly catheter leakage, penile skin breakdown, urethral fistulas, symptomatic UTI, poor bladder emptying, autonomic dysreflexia, hydronephrosis, CKD, and particularly expanding syringomyelia can occur. So this was a big lecture. I end my lecture here. I hope this will be helpful to you in your theory as well as in your oral exams, and you will come across in your everyday practice once in a while. If you know this particular neurogenic bladder, you will be able to pick up and you will be able to avoid complications of neurogenic bladder because they mimic identical like what we call as avoiding disorders or storage disorders without nerve involvement because of bladder pathophysiology like UTI. So do try to identify whether it is neurogenic or non-neurogenic complications or neurogenic or non-neurogenic. At the end of this lecture, if you like this lecture, please press button like. You can give a comment, suggestions, etc. so that I can improve. If you like this lecture, please subscribe. You can share with your friends. At the end of this lecture, I thank you all for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable and I appreciate you for spending some of the time with me. See you in your next lecture.